Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special last-minute live stream. Today, we're going to veer off the path of covering legal topics and talk about the passing of a very beloved figure in Asian American activism, a world-renowned photographer and Chinese American from New York City, Corky Lee, who passed away on January 27th at age 73 due to COVID-19. So let's turn off this music here. And so I did want to create something, even if it's not like a fully, beautifully edited short video for my channel. It's partly because actually last year when I started my YouTube channel, I was thinking about doing some interviews with some very notable Asian American activists throughout the country. And since Corky Lee was one of my Facebook friends and I had heard of him for the longest time, I was so happy when he became my Facebook friend many years ago. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be nice to interview him? And I always thought about reaching out to him and, thinking that, he would probably be okay with being interviewed. It seems like we have a lot of friends in common and know a lot of the same people through the Organization of Chinese Americans. But ultimately, unfortunately, the interviews that I did with a few people did not get that many views. The views have gradually gone up a little bit over time, but I decided not to focus more on the Asian American history type things. It seems like that's not really what most YouTube consumers are looking for. So of course, after hearing about his passing a few days ago, I did feel pretty regretful that darn, I never reached out to Corky after all. I didn't interview him for my channel. All I can do now is to, throw up a quick live stream and maybe tell some viewers out there about him. So if anyone out there actually knew Corky Lee and worked with him or was a personal friend of his or even a relative, then feel free to chime in. And I haven't added any guests to my live stream before, but I think there is a function to do that if you are willing to actually show up on the screen. This is being recorded for people to watch even after the live stream is over. So I would like to start out just as if people who see this may not even know who Corky Lee was. And it's kind of sad, but there were some YouTube videos breaking the news of his passing, and there were some offensive comments which I promptly reported to YouTube. Some people just flat out saying, well, who is this person and all that. So let me share the screen. And there have been actually many articles in the mainstream media about him, so I'm very happy to see that. So let's see here how I can share this. This is from the Insider. Okay, so this is from insider.com. Hopefully that showed up on the screen. Thank you for being here. This article says, let's start out from the beginning without reading the whole entire thing verbatim. So there's a picture of Corky Lee. I was actually surprised that he was 73 because I guess he had good genes or something because I never thought he was that old. So, but then again, I had heard of him ages ago because I knew that he had helped to capture the movement of bringing to light the hate crime where Vincent Chin was murdered back, I believe that was in 1982. So I always kind of in the back of my mind, of course, I knew Corky was older than I was, but I had no idea he was 73 years old. Wow. So it says iconic Asian American photographer Corky Lee, 73, dies of COVID-19 complications. And this is what's really sad because he would often post to Facebook, and although I never met him in real life, we were Facebook friends. So the last post that he did on Facebook was just maybe about a week and a half before he passed away. And there was suddenly this picture, which looked like it was from his hospital bed, where he thanked everybody for all their well wishes. And there were flowers and, looked like a bunch of cards or something piled up in a hospital room. So I thought, oh, well, I guess he's doing better or he's doing well. I wasn't really sure that he had COVID or anything like that. So here's a picture of him. And It says, Lee spent 50 years documenting important moments throughout Asian American history. He dedicated his life to Asian American communities, died on Tuesday from complications with COVID-19, his family said. So his hometown was Queens, New York. He was actually born in New York to parents who immigrated from China quite a while back. And it says Corky, as he was known to the Asian American community, was everywhere. He always had a camera around his neck, documenting a community event, capturing a social injustice for the record, and even correcting the social injustice of a historical event that took place well over a century ago. He did what he loved, and we loved him for it. So I did see some interviews. This is really uplifting to see that there are multiple interviews of him already on YouTube from years ago, where he talks about how, being very modest, he said that he was no good at math or science. He wasn't that great at school, but after he graduated from college, he decided that he was going to be a professional photographer. And so he had no formal training in film or photography, but he would just learn on his own. And so one of his projects early on was making sure that people remembered the contributions of the very first Chinese immigrants to the United States, the people who worked on the railroad, because of course there's this historical photograph where the railroad out west had been built, and conveniently they told all the Chinese workers to get out of there before they shot the picture. So apparently what Corky Lee did years later was that he decided he was going to recreate that moment when the railroad was built. He decided to find the descendants of all those Chinese railroad workers who back in the 1800s had worked on the railroad and did not get credit for all they did. So he found these descendants and gathered them all together and decided to take a whole new picture out there in front of the same place where that picture was taken. So I think that's pretty awesome. Another thing that I found out that Corky Lee did was that in 2017, he figured out where the murderers of Vincent Chin lived. And I knew this also because I had been in touch with some activists probably maybe 14 or so years ago. We were trying to see what we could still do regarding the Vincent Chin murder, because the two murderers did not even spend a day in jail for what they did, beating up Vincent Chin to the point where his brains were oozing on the pavement, and he subsequently died of his injuries before his wedding. So what Corky Lee did was he organized his own protest and protested in front of one of the murderers' homes, out in Nevada back in 2017. So he just definitely, wherever there was injustice or something going on, he would get involved and bring his camera. Or he was the person who would capture all those images. And of course, we know a photo is worth 1,000 words, right? So, I think maybe young people don't understand this, but there was a time when cameras were very, very rare and expensive. Nobody had cell phones, It was a lot of trouble. It was expensive to capture photographs or have photographs. The average person did not have a camera on them or have easy access to photography material. So way back then, Corky was there, to make sure these important moments in history and activism and social justice movements were being captured on film. So it says, Corky had a very unique lens. His passion was to rediscover, document, and champion through his images the plight of all Americans, but most especially that of Asian and Pacific Islanders, the statement added. He has left us with what's likely to be the single largest repository of the photographic history of Asian Americans of the past half century. So this is great. This is a photo of him pointing at a picture that he took. This is in the National Portrait Gallery of Yuri Kochiyama, who also unfortunately passed away about 6 to 7 years ago. And I was lucky enough to have met her at her home in Harlem back in 1998. So it says that he photographed important moments in Asian American history, including the gentrification of Chinatown and anti-war and fair housing protests. In documenting injustice, he photographed a 1975 protest against police brutality after a Chinese American was beaten by New York police officers, and protests that were sparked by the 1982 death of Chinese American Vincent Chin, who was killed in Michigan by auto workers who blamed the Japanese for the loss of auto jobs in Detroit. He also captured photos of everyday life in New York's Chinatown, which shows chefs on their lunch breaks, children dancing, and more. He first became interested in photography in junior high after seeing a famous photo from 1869, the picture that commemorated the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. So this is just one of the articles talking about him from just yesterday. And I will check on the live stream and see if there are any other comments here. Hey, thank you guys so much. Wow, it's really amazing to see so many people showing up on this live stream, because usually I only get like maybe 10 people at a time at most. So thank you guys all for being here. And like I said, I didn't actually know this person in real life, but I had heard of him for decades, and it was just like, hey, he's friends with a lot of my friends on Facebook. I'll send him a Facebook friend request, and of course he accepted. So he did respond, or actually I think I responded to one of his posts last year early on after COVID happened, because he was posting about COVID and about how there was like a shortage of face masks for the healthcare workers. So I posted a link to some new article I had just found about how Duke University discovered that you could reuse the KN95 mask. So he was impressed and he responded back to my comment. So I was like, oh, wow, he actually responded to me. But the funny thing is that so my ex-husband is fourth generation Chinese American, and his grandmother had owned a Chinese restaurant called the China Pearl in New York City, Chinatown, many, many years ago, probably around the 1940s or 1950s. So my ex was also friends with Corky, not really in real life, but over the internet. And he told me that he would have these like nice evening chats over the internet late at night with Corky. So this just shows you how, open-hearted and how much he cared about the community, that he would constantly take his time out of his busy schedule to talk with people he didn't even really know in real life. He was very happy to share his knowledge of, what he had seen, how he had grown up in New York City, his life being a photographer and activist and everything. So thank you guys for being here. Hi, Tyler. Yeah. I figured maybe you would appreciate information. If I don't know if you've heard of Corky Lee before, but he's probably like the most famous Asian American photographer ever. So at least in my opinion. So I don't know of any others. So, and Corky did receive some sort of lifetime achievement award from the Organization of Chinese Americans a number of years ago. So I'd also like to show up here, if I can figure out how this works again. I might have to unplug my microphone so that people can actually hear the volume from this YouTube video. But what it is a lecture that somebody, I think an Asian American group from CUNY, from the City University of New York, had actually put up on YouTube years ago, where Corky was giving a lecture to students and talking about his years being a photojournalist. So I think he was an artist in residence at CUNY, but again, if anyone actually knew him, please feel free to jump in and correct me if I got any of these facts about him wrong. So this is from YouTube. So we'll just play this real fast. And there he is. Okay, can you guys hear it now? Oh, great. Okay, well, let me see. That is weird because I turned off the mute. Okay. Well, I'm not sure if you guys can hear me or not, but basically the rest of it, we don't have to really hear the sound because he's his photographs here. Yeah, I'm sorry. I hit the unmute button, but unfortunately it's not working. Okay. So here he is just showing his photos. Sorry about the lack of sound. Okay, hopefully you guys can at least see that. Okay. If you guys can actually hear me through the microphone, can you please also let me know? Technical difficulties. Okay, great. Well, in this YouTube video where the title of it is something like 30 Years of Asian America Images by Corky Lee. Yeah, I don't think he's talking over this anyway. So just enjoy some of his photographs. Thank you. Here's the link. Okay. So I think that was the end of his slideshow presentation, and there he is talking to the students more about his career and you know, different things that kind of were compelling to him throughout his career. It sounded like he was also like a social service agency worker around New York City, Chinatown, when he first graduated from college. So it looks like he definitely did a lot of different things. And I will show you guys some really interesting statements or messages that some people I know put on Facebook within the last couple of days, talking about their memories of Corky. So let's see here. So we will stop this, and please do, definitely check out these really nice YouTube videos that had him talking and telling his own story and everything here. So this is a Facebook post that one of my friends, a real life friend, Vladimir Manuel. He's Filipino American, and he grew up around New York. So that's how I'm not 100% sure how he met Corky Lee. In fact, I didn't even know that Vladimir knew him until he posted this message the other day after finding out about Corky's passing. So Vladimir and I knew each other through the National Association of Asian American Professionals over a dozen years ago, when he and his wife lived in North Carolina. So let's see here. Let's try to get on this here. And he did, Vladimir did say it was okay to share his message. So here is the message that Vladimir posted in memory of Corky Lee. And I'll read it out loud. It says, "A sad day as we lost a major chronicler of Asian American history. Corky Lee literally made my brother the poster child of the Filipino American community when he photographed Eric Manuel, his brother, then 8 years old, and turned his picture as the poster of the Filipino American activism during the pre-Cory Aquino era. We then met in so many events, both Filipino American and Asian American, from cultural festivals to political demonstrations to conferences over the decades. A fellow alumni of Queens College, he also covered nonprofits I chaired, such as UFYC, FIND, and FAHSI. So I'm not really sure what all those acronyms are, because Vladimir was also very involved with a lot of different Filipino and Asian American groups. He has since moved back to the Philippines with his family. And he says, "Rest in peace and power, Corky." So this is a very nice photograph of him with his camera. This is a repost from the City University of New York. It says, "We are mourning the passing of Corky Lee, a Queens College alum who died of COVID-19 complications yesterday. A legendary photojournalist, activist, and New Yorker, Corky rightfully called himself the, quote, undisputed, unofficial Asian American photographer laureate." Okay, so then Vladimir's mom posted the picture that she still had, that Corky had taken, of Vladimir's brother. And Vladimir said it was okay to share this. So here's a picture of Vladimir's brother, Eric. The little boy is wearing a t-shirt that says, "It's only a tank, Philippine Revolution, 1986. Yeah, so it looks like a pretty crowded demonstration. And Eric is holding the Philippine flag as well as the United States flag. And it says, "In the spirit of people power, Corky Lee." And it has some people's signatures at the bottom of this photograph. So it's a picture of a framed picture that the little boy's mom still keeps, that Vladimir and Eric's mom still has. And Vladimir says, "I met him at the event when he took my brother's picture. I was still in high school. The picture was taken at Fordham University in the Bronx campus." Okay. And then, of course, there are a lot of other people that just chimed in different Facebook groups. This is a Facebook group that I'm in called Asian American Voices, which I think it was started by Ariane Ong, who is an attorney, someone that I knew when I was active in DC, when we were both law students in the DC area. So this is a Facebook group that is a space for progressive Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area to connect. And so I think this should be okay to read, but this is a pretty well-known Asian American Studies professor, Phil Tajitsu Nash, who posted a message here. He said, Corky Lee's untimely death this week has brought forth an unexpected outpouring of grief, as well as thankfulness for all he did for all of us. He was the web that bound us all together before there was Facebook. Let's continue to celebrate Corky and give him his due in terms of honors and celebrations. Please consider organizing programs of his work in your community, as well as discussions and forums on how he created a sustainable lifetime of activism. Hint, he was not just a photographer. Okay, so that's good to know because I really just knew him as a photographer. His toolkit included compassion, humor, relationship building meals after every event, and apportioning part of his day to keep in touch with his broad network of friends and colleagues. One other way you can honor Corky is by looking around you and asking yourself, who are other community treasures in my community? Which elders have knowledge, skills, stories, songs, photos, and other information we want to preserve? Then put together a plan with your friends and family to do oral histories. Plan an event to celebrate these people while they are alive and healthy. Make sure they have a will. Help them plan for the disposition of their pictures, videos, stories, and other works to appropriate libraries, universities, or museums. Be as proactive as Corky was, and you will be doing what Corky did every day, building a better future by truthfully capturing what is, what was, and what could be. Update, the Library of Congress has tools to help you preserve community histories. And this is a nice picture here that says, I'd like to think that every time I take my camera out of my bag, it's like drawing a sword to combat indifference, injustice, and discrimination, trying to get rid of stereotypes. So this is a chopped off, but these are very inspiring and wise words. So that's very nice of another friend of Corky's to share this memory of him. So I did also see some other personal Facebook postings from people who knew him in New York City, but these are people that, they just posted personally on their own personal Facebook. So I don't think I should just assume that they would be okay with me flashing it up on the screen. So yeah, thank you all for being here. Thanks, Alley Cat Castle and Sonia Elaine for being here. So this is another article from NBC News. Like, news of his passing also was reported on outlets like CNN. So that's so impressive that so many news channels wanted to cover this information. So this one is from NBC News. It says, beloved Asian American photographer Corky Lee dies after bout with COVID-19. One of his best known shots was recreating a historical image that Chinese railroad workers were left out of. Despite having done the bulk of the work, he asked their descendants to stand in. So this is a picture of him on a ladder. So he's going to take a picture of all those descendants who built the railroad. That's pretty amazing. It's like activism through photography, right? Photographer Corky Lee at a Golden Spike reenactment ceremony honoring the Chinese immigrants who built the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10th, 2014 in Promontory, Utah. So this is a photo that appeared in the Salt Lake Tribune. So in this article, which was published yesterday, says this again talks about him. It has a repost of a Twitter posting from the Asian American Journalists Association. It says, it is with heavy hearts that we extend its sincere condolences to the family and friends of Corky Lee, a longtime and beloved member of our AAJA family. He is cherished and missed. So also on YouTube, there is a very short video someone took of him and a few of his friends going into the National Portrait Gallery, probably about like three or 4 years ago, where he went to go look at his photograph here that was displayed on the wall. So that's also a nice thing to find on YouTube. So it says, he did what he loved and we loved him for it. According to a family statement, his passion was to rediscover, document, and champion through his images the plight of all Americans, but most especially that of Asian and Pacific Islanders. One of his most best-known shots was snapped at the site of the Golden Spike at Promontory Summit, Utah, where America was finally united coast to coast via the Transcontinental Railroad a century and a half earlier. Even though Chinese laborers did the bulk of the work, they were shut out of celebratory pictures at the time. Descendants of their workers finally had their chance to be photographed on that day, and Lee's eyes and index finger captured the moment of corrected history. Representative Grace Meng, Democrat of New York, mourned Lee's passing, calling him a walking museum. He worked relentlessly to ensure Chinese Americans' contributions to history were appreciated and documented, she said. There will be many moments when we will reach back to Corky's work to help our community move forward. So another really nice article here. So I definitely just wanted people to know more about this historical figure who unfortunately was taken away too early by COVID-19. Hope you all stay safe, and that you will also be inspired by the message and the life led by Corky Lee in what you try to do with your own career and what you do to help change society and improve America. So if anybody has any other stories or any comments that they would like to share with everybody. Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Karen. If you want to say anything about, how you know him or any stories or something, feel free to, but I do know that this is just such brand new news that I would say that, there are probably a lot of friends and family, people who really knew him that are probably a little bit too emotional and too shocked right now to really, get in front of the camera or spill their guts about stories or, it sounds like he touched many people, and he was always very giving of his time and loved to share history and knowledge with other people. And like I said, even people that he didn't even know in real life. So I helped watch over his camera equipments 40 years ago. Wow. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. And it's just incredible now how accessible getting your word out is to everybody. Now everybody has a cell phone. You can put up your own YouTube channel, as I did. And then, of course, please check out Tyler Tang's. He's a photographer, a professional photographer who actually went to school for film, I believe, at University of Arizona. So check out Tyler's YouTube channel, as well as Alley Cat Castle. Can you imagine if Corky Lee had his own YouTube channel? But, just seeing all of these things that he managed to put together in the last, who knows how many years, the last 40, 50 years of his life. As soon as he had his camera and was ready to go, he was not afraid to, jump right into the middle of demonstrations and be right there when people were getting beaten by police right before his very eyes. He would still be there snapping away. It shows the power of the camera and, the information that you can bring to the masses when you actually are there live and able to capture the moment on film or with your camera or video camera. So pretty impressive. Oh, okay. Sorry. Arizona State University. Okay. Yeah. So hope he inspires you. And I hope everybody out there will, go out there. He does have a Wikipedia entry. So that's pretty impressive too. So please check out those other YouTube videos that talk more about Corky's life, where he's actually talking and telling his own story. It's very remarkable that at least there are these videos out there where you can hear from his own voice, what motivated him and drove him through his career. So, okay. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. And if we are done, if nobody else wants to actually share something, then I really appreciate you guys all being here. And once again, please stay safe, stay away from people, stay masked, be extra careful because COVID is everywhere. And, like I said, the last post where I interacted with him, he was talking about COVID-19 last year, and who would have thought that this would happen. So wish you all well. And thanks again for being here to remember a very special person in American history, Corky Lee. Oh, Okay. His father and mine served among the 20,000 Chinese who served in World War II. Wow, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you to your family too. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And so that's why it's so important that these histories be preserved, before people pass on. So, I hope that, your family history is also being preserved, and that, even if you think that nobody would be interested in hearing about it, it could very well inspire somebody out there, somebody that you might not even know. So, yes, exactly. Yeah, I knew he was given all these awards through the OCA, so it's great that he was acknowledged while he was still alive. Thank you for being here. Okay, have a great weekend then.